All right. Good evening, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. Before we start, I just want to introduce Bailey. She's a new program coordinator from University of Arizona. Any words, Bailey?
No, I'm Bailey. I just started with the U of A as a program coordinator, so if you need anything, always feel free to reach out. I'll actually be based in Chandler, downtown Andover, so I'll be kind of more like a closer resource for you. I'll also send Danielle my information if anybody needs it for email or telephone. So if you ever need anything, please feel free to reach out. So I'll be a resource for you, a little bit closer than Tucson. And then today I'll be here till 7:30 if you have any questions.
All right. Thank you very much. So I'll share her information as soon as I get. Now, so you guys started on Node.js on Saturday. How was that? Cool. Oh, that's good. What? Somebody saying no? Maybe. Okay. Okay. So again, before I dive into more Node.js and coding and everything, that's all good. But I want to clarify a few things. I want to understand. Make sure that you guys actually understand. Okay. So the first question is, what is Node.js? Okay. Let's see, Miru. What is Node.js? What did you understand? What is Node.js?
Sorry, Node.js is basically JavaScript, the Chrome's JavaScript engine,
Okay.
out of the browser, standalone application.
Okay. Excellent. Is this the understanding for everybody? Everybody understand what Node.js is? No? Okay. I hear no's. What about you? What Irina, so tell me, what do you think Node.js is?
I don't know.
You don't know what Node.js is? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Tyler, yeah.
Isn't it? It's a big library that we have access to pull information from.
Okay. So Tyler thinks it's a. It's a. It's a library where you can pull stuff from it. It's kind of close. I know what you're talking about. Yes, Kelly. It's a server. Okay. So Node.js is a server. Okay. Kind of close. Anybody else? Yes.
Doesn't it just rely on JavaScript, like not in Visual Studio Code, but in the console?
Say that again. It's just JavaScript.
It allows you to run JavaScript outside of Visual Studio Code.
Outside of Visual Studio Code. Okay. It's not entirely like out of Visual Studio Code. Maybe browser. That's probably the appropriate one. So how many of you guys think Node.js is a library? Would that be a good definition for Node.js? It's a library. What about programming languages? Node.js a programming language? Okay. What about framework? Is that more appropriate? So basically none of these? Then what is Node.js? So the right answer is actually that Node.js is none of these. Actually, it's not a library. It's not a programming language. It's not a new programming. It's not a framework. A lot of people get confused when they talk about Node.js. You might know the coding part. You might know what it does. But when it comes to definition and understanding, I've seen a lot of people getting confused. Okay, so Node.js is not a library, not a language, not a framework. It's actually a runtime environment. Runtime, and that is the correct definition of Node.js. Somebody asked what Node.js is. Node.js is actually a runtime environment. Now, runtime environment is a difficult word and it's kind of hard to understand what it means. Um, so, what it means is it is an environment where a programming language runs. Okay? So, for example, we have seen JavaScript, right? Where does JavaScript run? In the browser. That is the only place where JavaScript runs. Okay, so we can say technically the runtime environment for JavaScript would be a browser because that's the place where the browser, where the language runs. Okay, so Node.js is exactly the same thing. It's an environment that lets you run JavaScript outside the browser. Okay, the JavaScript flavor that we have seen is the one that only runs in the browser. JavaScript cannot run outside the browser. So what Node.js did it came up and it came with a mechanism. It created this environment that allows JavaScript to run outside the browser, right? For example, on your desktop, on your computers, right? So for example, other languages such as Java, they also have a runtime environment. That's why they can run on your laptop. And it's called, for Java, it's called JRE, Java Runtime Environment. Okay, so similar to that, Node.js is a runtime environment that lets JavaScript run outside the browser. Okay, now how was Node.js created? Somebody mentioned, Miro mentioned Chrome engine. So basically, what he is saying is, how does JavaScript run inside a browser? It has a JavaScript engine. Remember initially when we were starting JavaScript, I said every browser has a JavaScript engine that makes the JavaScript recognize and run. Okay, so Chrome's JavaScript engine is called V8. Similarly, Microsoft Edge has a different JavaScript engine. It's called Chakra. Mozilla Firefox has a different JavaScript engine. They call it SpiderMonkey. Safari has a different. It's called JavaScript Core or something like that. So every browser has a different JavaScript engine, right? So every browser basically is creating a runtime environment where JavaScript runs. So what Node.js did was they took Chrome's JavaScript engine V8, which is open source. The code is out there. This guy Ryan Dahl in 2009 took that code out and created an environment called Node.js. What it did was it let JavaScript run outside the browser. That's all it did. Okay. Now the benefit of that is, well, fortunately or unfortunately, you don't have to learn a new programming language. So we'll be sticking to JavaScript. Okay, but the other benefit is now you can create some server-side code, right? Before Node.js, you would have to learn either Java or Python or C# or something because you are trying to create some code that runs outside the browser, right? Until 10 years ago, these were the languages. They still are, but after Node.js, people who are familiar with front-end code, they don't have to really learn a new language. They are able to create and become full stack developers or actually create some backend code. Okay. Before that, there was always that thing that, oh, I'm a front end engineer. I'm waiting on some tasks from the backend people to complete. And backend would complain, hey, front end doesn't understand what I'm trying to do and all that stuff. Now, as a front end engineer who knows JavaScript well, can actually write code using Node.js and actually be a backend engineer as well. Okay. Again, Node.js, I know it's been 10 years, but it's still very young runtime environment, or you know what they're trying to do. It's becoming popular, but still there's no comparison or a competition between Java or C Sharp. They have been there for like 30 years. They have a lot more unit tests, and they've been improved over years. But still, a lot of companies, I would say smaller companies or startups are kind of using Node.js. It's free, open source, so anybody can use it. Okay, Java and C Sharp are kind of becoming more, you have to pay for it and all that stuff. Okay? All right, so after this, does everybody understand what Node.js is? It's not a library, it's not a new programming language, it's still JavaScript. It's not a framework, it's actually an environment that you have to install on your computer. If you don't have Node.js installed, any code in JavaScript that you write and you're trying to run through terminal, it's not going to work. Okay, so you have to have Node.js installed, and the reason is because you have to create the runtime environment. Same with Java. If you're trying to write some Java code, you need to have JRE installed, which is a runtime environment. Otherwise, Java doesn't run. Same with C Sharp. I think it's called .NET Core for C Sharp. So you have to have that installed on your computer to create any kind of code. Okay, so similar to that, JavaScript, you need Node.js. Okay, any questions, clarification, or does everybody understand this? Good? All right. So with that, let's go ahead and start on our activity. Let's do a quick revision. We'll do it together, and then I'll show you some different libraries as Tyler was mentioning. So Tyler, what you were mentioning is, I'm going to go through it, what it is. There's a collection, there's a Node.js library, right, where you can download different libraries and use it. But that's not Node.js. It's actually called npm, and I'll go through it in a bit. Okay. So let's start with the first one. Okay, let's see this one. All right, so you guys saw process.argv on Saturday. The good thing about this is I just need to create a JavaScript file and don't have to do anything else. Come on, let's say command.js, and then you can start running this. Oh, Irina, do you understand now Node.js? Do you have any questions? Okay. All right. So let's see, starting a blank JavaScript file, create a Node application that takes in 2 command line arguments and checks if they're equal. If the 2 numbers are equal, then output true, otherwise false. All right, and start with console log process argv. All right, we'll do this together. Again, one thing I would like to clear is now once you get to your project 2, you will see that you will be writing your front-end code, which will be in JavaScript. You will be writing your back-end code, which will be in JavaScript. That's the biggest confusion that people face, is how do they differentiate, is this my front-end code or is this my back-end code, right? And the reason is because they both are JavaScript. But again, the JavaScript, the flavor of JavaScript that you're going to write using Node.js, I like to call it, it's JavaScript on steroids. They have a lot more functionality. Syntax is almost same. There are few differences. Okay. So sometimes what I've noticed is people are writing code from Node.js kind of on their front end and it doesn't work. Well, of course, it will not work. And sometimes people are trying to use the front end code as a back end. Okay. So be very careful. And again, the reason is because both sides is JavaScript. All right, so just for clarification, when I say we are going to write this function in JavaScript, I'm saying that we are going to write this in our front end. Okay, when I say we are going to write this code in Node.js, what I'm talking about is we are going to write this in our backend, right? Just to differentiate so that people understand, those are the terms that I'm going to use. If I'm saying JavaScript, I'm referring to front end. If I'm saying Node.js, then I'm referring to our backend. Okay, so you will have to use node space the file name and then run that file. Okay, is everybody clear on that? So that way there will be less confusion. Okay, but again, this doesn't mean that Node.js is a programming language. I'm just saying it so that it kind of makes it easy for us to understand. Okay, all right, so the first thing you guys saw was let's console log what was it? Process.argv. What is the data type for process? What is it? String. There's a dot over here. Object. So every time the answer is object, you will be 50% of the time you will be right. Either it's object or callback functions. All right, it's an object, right? Because there's a dot notation, string doesn't really have anything. Okay, so this tells us that process is actually an object. Okay, argv. Since you guys already saw, what is the data type for argv? Argv is not a string. Now Hannah is like, I'm not going to say anything. Do you know what is the data type for argv? It's a property. Yes, it's a property, but what type of a property? Is it a like go through the data types? What is it? Did you guys hear what Raymond said? Let's run this and see. Ls. Did I create this outside? I think I did. So if you see the output, what is the data type for argv? Square brackets. It's an array. Does everybody see the Y? You see the square brackets? This tells me that argv is actually an array. Right? Everybody sees that? An array of strings. An array of strings. So basically, process is your object, and then argv is a property inside that process object, but the data type is it's an array. And what is it an array of? It's an array of strings, not numbers, not booleans or anything. It's always an array of string. Okay? Any questions? Does everybody understand that? Okay?
What's the argv stand for?
What is it? What?
Argv.
argv stands for. So I especially prepared for this because I knew Arena is going to exactly ask this question. No, I'm not joking. So argv comes from, and the answer is still the same as my previous answer. Argv is borrowed term from Linux, from terminal people. So from the mainframe, that's where the this comes from. It actually stands for arguments. Basically, these are your arguments that are passed into your program. But the term carries on from our mainframe people when they had Linux system and they were using it. That's where the argv actually comes from. Okay, but it actually means arguments. Okay, these are your command line arguments. Okay, now process is an object. What kind of an object is this? Did I declare this object? I did not. So what does this mean? Process is a not window. There's no window now. Okay, good observation though. There's no window anymore. Why? Because there's no browser anymore. So what is it?
What else is here for window?
Right. That's a good thing. It's Node.js now, since that's a runtime environment. So process is, somebody said global. Who said global? Yeah. So process is a global object which is part of Node.js. Okay. So Node.js has a lot of code and a lot of functionality. So process looks to be a part of Node.js. Okay. Similar to the window object, since window is part of the browser, process is a global object that is part of Node.js. So you don't have to declare anything. It's a global object that is available. Okay, now I'll show you the documentation where you could find a lot more global objects, properties, and everything. Okay. All right. Now argv is an array, but argv already has two elements inside it. Am I filling it? I mean, I'm not doing anything. I just did a console log of this, right? I'm not putting anything in my array, right? So where is this coming from? What or what are the first two indexes telling? So what is it? New pathway, yes. So argv is the first two indexes of argv are always pre-assigned, right? You can override it, but don't do it. That's part of the Node.js. What they do is the first element of argv tells you the path where your Node.js is installed. Okay, so in my computer, this is where Node.js is installed. Okay, the second one tells you the program that you're running when you do node and the program name. What is the path of that program? So the program that I'm running, the JavaScript file that I'm running, is actually at this location. Okay, so you will always get that. All right. So this was saying, let's see, create a node application that takes in two command line arguments and checks if they are equal. So so let's go ahead and create some variables and save some command line arguments. So let's say arg1 is equal to process.argv, and what index would have that argument? 3. Oh, actually 2, right? Because 0 and 1 are reserved, so it starts with 2. Okay, so we need two arguments. The second one would be arg2 process.argv and then 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and console log arg1 and then arg2 to make sure these two are working. Okay, now how do I pass in these arguments? They are separated by space. All right, so let's say arg1 arg2, and this is how it shows up. Okay, again, remember these are string. It doesn't matter. Node.js does not care, does not identify them as any other data other than string. So if you are passing in a number, you will have to convert this using parse int or parse float, but they are going to come to you as strings. Okay, and these are separated by space. So if I was saying this is an argument, right? How many values is it going to pass? Each one would be different, right? Because they are separated by space. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 arguments. Okay. Did anybody try if I want to make this pass as a single argument? What do I have to do? What is it? Underscore. That's a good one. But what if I need spaces? Nobody tried it? Huh? Oh, the something like this, or just a forward slash. So like this. Sorry. Oh no, definitely not this. It kind of crashed, I think. Or do I need a space here? Let's see. Did that work? Yeah. Okay. So, or you can maybe then add a space here. So this should work like this. Okay. So you guys see it? At least somebody tried it. All right. The other way you could do is you can add a double quotes as well as a string, and that should also take this whole thing as one argument. So this, and then second. So it will take this as a complete one argument. Okay. All right. So let's quickly complete this. So we want to compare the two and output false or true or false. So if arg1 is equal to arg2, you can console log true, otherwise you can console log false. Okay, so this would take care of this exercise, right? The more important part was just a revision of process.argv. All right, any questions, any confusion before we move forward? Does everybody understand Node.js? Everybody understand what process.argv is? Where are the values coming from? What is the concept of Google objects? Good? Questions? Good? All right. because the next ones would be a bit more difficult, more trickier. But you guys see that there's no need for script tags, HTML, and anything. Again, why? Because of Node.js. This is a different server-side code now. It has nothing to do with your browser or HTML or anything. Okay, this is almost same if you would use Java or C Sharp or any language, right? You don't have HTML pages or anything over there. It's the same thing. The only confusion that people have is because this is still JavaScript, and that's where the confusion comes from. Okay, so just be careful because on your front end, in your HTML, you will have JavaScript, and your back end also you will have JavaScript. Okay, but there is no process.rv in your front end. Okay, there's no process RV when you're writing your HTML code. All right, that's the biggest difference. All right, any other questions? Good. Okay, so Node.js comes with what Tyler was mentioning, um, a set of libraries to help us write code, right? One of them we saw process.rv. It's a global object which is part of the Node.js. Okay, so similar to that, there are a lot more libraries part of it. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the Node.js documentation. Okay, so Node.js, let's look at docs. Okay, all right, we are on 10.16. Is everybody on this version? Okay, anybody knows what LTS means? No? Nobody looked up LTS? How is that possible? Are you like, what is LTS? LTS means long-term support. This means that this version has been tried and tested and the support is available. The other one is beta release, the other version. So expect some issues with it. That's what they're saying. So this one has not a lot of bugs and it has been tried and tested and has been released for good use. That's why it's called LTS, long-term support. It's supported, but the other version, the beta one, is it's a beta release. So usually people who want to test out new features, they download and kind of test it out and report bugs on their GitHub page. That's what that one is for. Okay. So when we go into the documentation, you will see a lot of documents over these. All of these are basically part of a Node.js, right? Depends. These are all modules, and they are all part of Node.js. You don't have to install anything extra. If you're trying to use any one of these are all part of Node.js. Okay. So for today, for the next exercise, we are going to look at, for example, file system. Let's see this one. Okay. What this allows is the file system module in Node.js lets you create a file, write to a file, and then read from that file. Basically, you're going to create a file on your local system using Node.js. You're going to put some content inside that text file, let's suppose, and then you're going to read the data from that file. That's what the file system does. In next class or future classes, we will look at HTTP also. HTTP module will let you make your AJAX calls. It's not called AJAX over here, but from the concept wise, we can make HTTP GET calls from Node.js using the HTTP module. Okay, we'll take a look at it in future classes. For now, today we will look at file system. Okay, so file system, as I said, we are going to understand how to write and read files using Node.js. Okay, so let's start with writing files. So if you scroll down here, let's try to find a function called write file. Getting close. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we'll look at the documentation over here. Okay, Irina, please read me the documentation. What does this say? What is the syntax for write file? Start from here. What does it say? Excellent. So it says file data options and callback. What does it mean? What is it saying? First what? First the file. What is file? Okay, good. Right against. Okay. So what does a square bracket means?
It's optional.
It's optional. Good, excellent. And then the last one, callback function. Excellent. So write file is a function which is part of. Oops, there's my mouse. Okay, which is part of something called fs. Okay, what is fs? Looks like a object since there's a dot notation, and we'll come to that. Fs is actually a module or a global object. So this has a function called write file, and it has how many arguments? One, two, three mandatory or necessary arguments and one optional argument. Okay, does everybody see this documentation? Okay, so basically write file is taking four arguments. One of them is optional. You can skip this or you can give some option, it doesn't matter. Okay, but these are four required arguments. Now the first argument could be a string, could also be a buffer, could be a URL, could be an integer. All right, so these are the data types that are part of Node.js, but you just need to understand that the first argument can be of data type string or, this is an or, right? It could be a buffer, URL, or integer. At this point, we don't know what buffer or URL is, and we won't concern ourselves, but that's what the documentation is saying, right? At some point, you might run into some areas where you would need these, not for today or not for now, okay? But that's how the documentation reads. The same thing, data, right? Data, this can be a string, a buffer, or a typed array, or a data view. Okay, I have no idea what typed array or data view is, but looks like these are some data types that are part of Node.js. Okay, if you click them, it will take you the exact documentation and you can read up more on it, right? But for now, we are just concerned about this and we just need to understand what we are trying to do. Okay, more important is string. So let's keep that in mind that the first two options are going to be string. Okay, now the third argument is optional. You can skip it. If you want to use it, then this options can be an object or a string. Okay, again, this is how so I'm just going through the documentation so that you guys understand how to read the Node.js documentation for any other modules. Okay, so options argument could be an object, could be a string. Within options, then you have further different options, right? It's an option. So what are the options? It looks like it has encoding, mode, some kind of a flag, uh, and it says by default this flag is W. Okay, encoding by default looks like it's going to pass encoding of UTF-8. Okay, we'll come back to it and we'll see. But this is how this reads. Now the last one is callback function. Okay, callback function is simply just a function. Okay, so that's why there's no any other data. It has to be a function. Okay. Important thing over here, this line, asynchronously. Okay. What does this mean when they say that write function is asynchronous or asynchronously writes data to a file? What does that mean? Yes, Kelly. What is it? You don't know how to phrase it? No, go ahead. It does what? One at a time? Hmm. Okay. Let's see. What do you mean one at a time? Like one text at a time? Okay. So one at a time. Okay. Anybody else? What is yes, Sarah?
Isn't it when it returns, it runs everything and whatever returns first comes back first?
Whatever comes back first.
Like whatever takes the shortest.
Okay. Okay. I see where you guys are going, and I think you guys understand. Yes, Chris.
Um, it will run the write, but it'll be running the rest of the code after.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure that's what you guys are seeing. So write file, just like a Ajax function, it's not going to wait for this function to get completed is going to skip and go to the next line. Remember the Ajax function, right? You make a call, and whatever you have below the Ajax function, it starts running that code. Same thing with over here with write file. So if anything that is dependent on this write file, that's why this callback function is. As soon as you see a callback function as an argument, know that it's an asynchronous function. It's not going to wait for this function to complete. It's going to skip to the next line, and once this is done, then it's going to come back over here and then call this callback function. Same as the Ajax one. Okay? So if your code is dependent on something written to the file and being completed, that's where the callback function comes in. You have to put your code inside this callback function because the next line is not going to wait. Okay? Good. All right. Excellent. Questions? Does everybody kind of get an idea how to read this or what's going on? I'll show you the code and we'll go through kind of similar example over here. Okay. Questions? All right. Again, these are all built into Node.js, so you don't have to have anything extra installed. But there are different modules, and we'll go through them, which need some extra installation. Okay, so let's look at this example. So basically what you have to do is you have to write some code similar to that. The first argument is what was it? File. So it looks like a name of the file with a type. So over here they have message.txt, looks like a text file, and you're giving a name to that file. Okay, so the first argument basically looks like to be a name of the file. Okay, the second argument is data. Okay, looks like this is the data that you're trying to write to this file. Okay, could be a string, could be a buffer, typed array, data view. We won't worry about this. We'll just look at the string. Okay, so you can pass your data as a string. It's going to take that data and then put it into this file. All right, the last one is your callback function. Okay. Over here, we are going to skip the options. When we get to read file, that's where we need to use this option for now. Why? The first thing you will see is if you don't give anything, by default, it is considering UTF-8. Okay? Anybody has any idea what UTF-8 is? It is encoding. Excellent. What does it mean? Letters on the screen. Yes. So UDF is, on a simple term, is human readable letters, and UDF encoding contains every possible keystroke or letter that is on your keyboard. Okay, that's what UDF-8 means. So basically, this is saying is the data that you write to a file follows this encoding. All right. This means that any possible character is going to be part of your data set. Okay, it could be @ or a crazy character that is on your keyboard. This is saying that this file can contain any one of those characters. That's what this means. Okay. Now, of course, the computer translates into a different way. So when we are reading the file, I'll show you if you skip this, what happens. You will see a garbage letters. That's how the computer has it. But it's not human readable. We won't be able to recognize what's going on. Okay, that's where this comes in. But we can skip this. Why? Because by default, the write function is going to consider that this is part of a UTF-8 encoding. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that. We will write this function and see what happens. Okay. All right. So let's go back to our. Let me open my folder. And we'll start from there. Let's see. Oops. All right. Right. Let's call it right. Okay. Go ahead and create a file, write.js. Okay, and we are ready to run this code. Okay. So from the documentation, again, these are part of a module which is FS. Okay, so anything that is part of this from the documentation, to use that you have to import it. Okay, You don't have to install anything. Remember this keyword because in the next exercise you will see what I mean. Okay, so this is all part of Node.js, but you need to import this module. So how do you do that? You create a variable, let's call it fs, could be anything. But this is important, require, and then fs. Okay, remember in JavaScript, now when I say JavaScript, I'm referring to the HTML. Okay, so in JavaScript, how do you import a library? What is it? In HTML, what do you use? A script tag, right? That's how you import any library. Use a script tag, and then you start using that library. Okay, I hope you guys are not forgetting HTML. Right? Okay, all right. So that's how you import. Now, how do you import? In Node.js, you use the keyword require, right? Similar concept, but since this is JavaScript on steroids, they have a different way of doing it. Okay, so that's one of the difference. Again, will this work in JavaScript, the front end? It will not, right? There's no require, there's nothing like that. Okay, all right, so you import the library first. Yes.
How come process is not like, is it because like process is just the global object?
It's because it's the global object, that's why. Yeah, you don't need to import anything. Yeah.
So like so everything else on like the docs page.
Yeah,
pretty much
you have to pretty much import. Yeah. Yeah, these ones, these are all the libraries that come built in that you have to. There's a globals over here. If you see these globals, look into this. This will tell you should tell you all the objects that you don't have to import. They are automatically available in Node.js. Okay, good question. All right, so let's follow in the example. If I'm using this variable called fs, it is fs dot, and then you will see the methods over here. So we're looking for write file. Okay, let's close this up. All right, so our first argument was name of the file. Let's create a movies file. Okay, our second argument was the data that you are trying to write into. Path, options, data. Okay, the data that you're trying to write into that file. Okay, so it could be any of those three parts, but we will consider it as a string. Okay, so let's go ahead and write some movies separated by comma. It doesn't matter. Okay, and then we'll skip the options part. We will go with the default values, but the last one is necessary, which is a callback function. Okay, so let's go ahead and a callback function, which is going to give you one argument of error if something happens. So let's go ahead and follow the same same flow what they're saying. So in this callback function, that requires a variable called which is going to give you an error. Okay, now it could be error, ERR, doesn't matter. Okay, since documentation has it as ERR, so I'm following the same pattern. But again, you guys understand that it does not matter. It could be error, ERR, doesn't matter. You can name anything. The only thing important is that it has to have one argument. Okay. So let's go ahead and complete this. So if ERR, this means if there's any error, let's go ahead and edit it out. Okay. Let's see. Let's do a return here. And then this means that if this is successful, this line is going to be executed. Successfully written data to file. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? 4 arguments. One of them is optional. We are skipping that. The first one is the name, the second is the data, and the last one is the callback function. Callback function with one argument called error. If there's any error writing to the file, any exception occurs, you're going to console log that. Otherwise, you will console log that this is successfully written. Okay? So let's go ahead and run this code and see if this is running. Okay? Alright, so node JS successfully written. Okay? Now, what this code is saying is that it created a text file and it put some data inside it and it created that file. Where do you think the file is? In the same folder. So just refresh it and you will see that file. Okay? Again, if you just give a name, it's going to create that file in the same folder where your JS file is. Okay? Now if you open this JavaScript file, there's my data. Exactly how you wrote it. Okay? If you do this, what's going to happen? Right? It's going to create a file outside the right folder. Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, it created outside. So this follows the path also. It recognizes if you're trying to create a path, or if you just give it a name, it's going to create a file within that folder. Let me remove this. Remove this, and then we'll come back. All right, questions? Does everybody understand how to use the write function from Node.js to write our file? Good?
Can we do anything else in that last function?
Can you do anything else? Like what?
I don't know. Not a function.
No, it has to be a function. You cannot. Again, look at the documentation, right? Does it say optional? It does not say this is optional. So you have to give it a function. If you do something else, you will get a nice error from Node.js, which it will say that you are using it incorrectly. So it has to be a function.
Is it always to output the error and that's it?
It has to be what?
Always have to do like output the error and that's it?
Yes. It has to be always output the error and nothing else. Yes. Callback, error. Apparently from the documentation, that is the only thing you can do with this function, with the write file function, right? That's what the documentation is telling. So yes, that is exactly what will happen. That's it. Again, what would you like to do other than the error? Right. So that is, you are trying to read the data. So there's a different function for it to read that data. We'll look at it the next. Yes, Raymond.
The console.error, what is that actually?
What it does is it gives you, instead of like writing it like this, I think it makes it colorful, creates like a red console or something. That's what it does. I mean, it's just differentiating those two things. It's not. Well, it didn't do it over here. So what it does is when you run this code on your server, you will see in a different format. That's all it does. That it identifies that this is going to be an error. That's all. You can replace it with log. It doesn't really change anything, but that's the purpose of that. Okay. Let me. All right. So if I run this program again, what's going to happen? It overwrites this file. Okay. So if you have any new data, right? If it already exists, if the file already exists, it's going to go ahead and overwrite that file. All right. Remember that. All right. Any questions?
Is there a way to like add to the file without deleting?
Good question. Without deleting, yes. So basically, what is that called? You are appending, right? So let's look at the documentation. I wonder if there's an append function. Let's go back here. File dot append. Where is it? Okay, so there is an append method. We'll take a look at that as well. Okay, so this will not override that file. Okay, what else? Any questions on write file? Yes.
So on line one.
On line number 1.
Yeah. The first FS, that technically just be anything you want to name it, but the second
Exactly.
FS, it as a string, that's required.
That is required, and that has to exactly match this FS over here.
Okay.
This thing.
Got it.
Oh, that's a better. Let's do it constant since we are never changing it. We follow best practices, right? My FS variable is never changing. So this is, to use this module, this is what you have to do, right? It has to be FS. Again, you understand correctly that the first FS doesn't matter. You could say file, file system, and write the whole thing. That will work. All right, any other questions? Okay, so let's look at the next one, which is read file. Since we have written the file, let's go back and look at our read file. Read file. Okay, similar documentation. Who wants to try? Josh, you want to try? Now you have to try. All right. So let's read it. How do you read this documentation? What is it saying? Start from the first line, fs.read file.
fs.read file, it requires a path to read.
Ah, excellent. Requires a path. Okay, keep going.
The options are optional, and then it requires a callback function.
Excellent. That's it. So 3 arguments. Out of these 3, 1 is optional, 2 are required. All right. The first one has to be a path, which makes sense that if you're trying to read a file, you need to tell this function which file are you trying to read. Where is the file located? So that's the path. The last option is a callback function, and we will look at the description. But the path could be a string, buffer, URL, integer. We won't worry about the other 3. We'll make it a string. Options over here is interesting now. The options is optional, but it also has encoding, a flag, but over here the encoding is null. Okay, so we will go ahead and try to read a file without any options since it is optional, but the encoding over here is null, and then you will see how the data comes out as. It's going to be like a garbage data because it doesn't know how to translate or what encoding to use. Okay, and in the example we need to use UTF-8 because that's how we are writing the file. Okay, the encoding that you're using to write to the file, you need to use the same encoding so that you can read the file. Okay, the last one is a callback function. This time, how many arguments does the callback function takes? 2, right? The error, same as the write file, and the data. Why is data over here? What is it? Why? So that's what you're going to read. So you're reading from a file which has some data, and this variable will have that data inside it. Same as the AJAX function. Remember, in the AJAX function, in the callback function, you had error, data, success, error, and data, right? So over here you have error and data will have all the data that it reads from this file. Okay, so let's go ahead and look into, where did it go? Look into this function. So we'll use the same one, and I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it read.js. Okay, it's the same module, so we're going to use our fs require fs. Okay, the function is fs dot read file. All right, let's see, the first is the path, and since movies is already there, so we don't have to specify any special path. Otherwise you could do /c/something/something, wherever the file is. Now since the file is at the same folder, so we don't have to do any of the slashes. Okay. The next one is, what was the next one?
The optional.
The optional. So let's go ahead and skip that. Let's go to the callback function, right? So callback function, and it takes in two arguments. The first is going to be error, okay, and the next one will have the data. So I'm going to follow the same names that they have over here, but again, we understand that we don't have to use the same names. Could be anything that you like. Okay. So let's go ahead and complete this. So if there's any error, I want to console log that error, and then just return from it. Okay, I don't want to proceed. If this is successful, then go ahead and console log data. Okay. All right. So this time, let's go ahead and read JS. All right. You see this data in my text file? That's not what it is, right? It's actually human readable strings, right? But when I read it, you are reading what the computer is storing, how it is being stored, right? Now, since we skipped that optional part, it doesn't know what to read in. Again, remember, it said the encoding is null by default, so that's why you will see something like this. Okay, so to fix that, you have to pass in the encoding, which is UTF-8. Okay, let's clear this and run this again, and there's your data. Yes. No, they were actually hexadecimals. That's how your computer translates each letter. The format is called hexadecimal format, or HEX hex. So those were actually uh, these letters translated into hexadecimal form. That's why you see all those numbers over there. Yes.
So you don't have to specify, or you can specify options in the write function, but it
Yes.
defaults to UTF.
Yes, exactly. So that's why we skip it. We don't want anything else. For now, we just need the encoding part. That's why. Okay? Yeah. But the reading file kind of skips that. And the intention is the read file doesn't know who's trying to read. Maybe a human is trying to read, so UTF-8 is good. Maybe it's being used for a different purpose where you would use a different encoding. So that's why they're kind of forcing you to tell Node.js what kind of encoding and how do you want to read this data. Okay? All right, questions? Everybody understand how the read file is working? Yes, sir.
Can you just give an example of like why you would use read?
Why you use read?
Like you're pulling, because obviously in this
Oh, okay.
context.
Yeah, so a good example. Let's suppose your API keys. When you're writing your Node.js code, you would be using some other Node.js libraries. Okay. Remember, you guys were doing project one. You guys must have run into some libraries where they had those Node.js examples. You guys see that, right? So those are libraries which are going to use. And if you're using a third-party library, you most probably need API keys, right? So what do? You write your API key to a file, and then in your code, you will read those API keys using read file, get the API keys, and do it. Okay, that would be one example. So the reason is that you are isolating your API key from your code, and then most probably you don't want your API key to be put on GitHub because anybody can access your API key, right? So this file you will probably delete it and then put it in your README saying, hey, if you want to use my code, please go ahead, get an API key, create a file called api.txt, and then put your API key over here. Why? Because your code would be looking for this API key file, reading that API key, and then performing those actions. That could be one example. Okay? Yeah? All right, any other questions? Okay?
Can I ask a stupid question?
Yes. No. I mean, there's no stupid question, but please go ahead and ask.
Including there, that's console log and not just console log.
Why not? Exactly. So what will happen if I just do console log? Let's suppose my error happens. Now what happens? Okay, and then will it execute this line? There you go. Yes, because I don't want there won't be any data. It's going to be null. It's kind of redundant and it's going to confuse. So that's why error, don't do anything after. Right now it's just one line, but I might have a lot more functionality, right? That's dependent on that data. So that's why I put a return over here so that it doesn't proceed. Any other questions? Good. All right, I've been talking for 1 hour now, so you guys are going to do exercise, which is going to do read and write. Again, please make sure go to the documentation of Node.js, make yourself familiar with it. You guys will be using that a lot. And then we'll take a look at append file and then move on to some third-party libraries. Okay. This is exercise number 13. So it looks like you have a text file, or you're going to create a text file, put some data inside it. Okay. Each element in the file on separate lines. That's probably the more trickier part. Again, use your JavaScript knowledge and try to think how would you distribute or kind of put everything in a separate line. Okay. Otherwise, you still have to use the same functions. So the text file is already given to you, comma separated. All right, you have to read this file and then output it like this, without the commas, each one on a different line. Right? Remember JavaScript? Similar functions, they have the same, most of the time they have the same functions. All right, have a good night. Of course. All right.
I sent you all my information.
Okay.
And I'll probably see you next week.
All right. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Chris, did you see the global object documentation? Okay. Okay. Yeah, it has all the information. These are, yeah, these are within all modules. You don't have to. Yeah, we wouldn't be able. So process is there, and there are a few more. Looks like the timeouts. This is important. We'll eventually touch these ones. All right, how we doing? Did everybody figure out it's the split function in JavaScript that you have to use? Or is there any other way somebody did differently? Anybody did it without using the split function? Nope. Okay. All right. Any questions from the exercise or anything about read file and write file? Yes. Right. That was my question. I don't know. I didn't try. No, I mean, you never know. That's what I'm asking. Maybe somebody figured out a way. Then I don't know. I haven't actually even thought about it. So I was just wondering if somebody tried it without it. Okay. All right. So one more function I will show you, and then we'll take a break, and then we will look at. You guys will then come back from the break and do a exercise, a little bit bigger exercise that will uh, follow all the three functions. I think. Okay. The last one that I want to talk about is the append file that Goose asked. He said, "How do I do it without actually overwriting the file?" So the function is fs.append file. Okay. By this time, everybody understand how to read the documentation. Takes in 4 arguments. The middle one is optional. By default, it is UTF-8. It's very similar to the write function. Okay. So we'll follow the same concept as our write method, and then we'll append something to make sure this is working. Okay. There is. So I did everything in the right function. That's fine. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and create a append .js. Okay. Let's go ahead and close this. First thing I need to do is import the module fs. No, not release. Require fs and then fs dot append file. Okay. The first argument is oops, path of the file. If I do movies.txt, it should be able to read it. Um, why? Because it already exists on this path. Okay. If you look at the documentation, it says that if the file does not exist, what is it going to do? It's going to create that file. just like the write file method. Okay? What was that? All right. So a path and then the data that I want to add. So let's go ahead and add a new movie to this. Okay, and this is my movies.txt. Right now it has these. Okay, and everything else remains the same. We can skip this. Default values are there, what we require, and then a callback function. So function. Okay, it takes in one argument, error, and we will log this error and then exit out. Error and then go and proceed. Otherwise, we will say successfully appended. Okay, that is exactly, well, almost actually the same as your write function. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this and successfully appended. So let's go back and see. Oh, why did it create outside? Because I'm outside, that's why. Put this inside this folder and then go ahead and delete this file and let's try it. Right, to go inside this folder, append, there it is. So node append, successfully appended. Let's go back and open, and there's my new file. It's kind of messed up. So you see what append does, it starts appending from the character, the last character. Okay, so R was the last one. Anything you add is going to be added right next to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix this. Just add a comma and a space. Okay, so that kind of fixes it. So append is going to go ahead and add data to your existing file. If the file that you are putting it over here does not exist, it's going to create the file, just write the write function, and then put that data inside that file. Okay, so write file, write to the file. If you call that function again, it's going to override that file. Append file is going to take this data and append it to this file. Okay, any questions on append file? How did what? This comma? Yeah, super fancy way to do this. All right. One last thing, just to show you guys the async thing. This will console log first. Let's see if this works. Okay. And if you guys see this, oops. Okay. So just to reiterate that async one, append file, all these functions are asynchronous. So this line will always log first before this function actually completes. Okay. So any code that you have after, just like the Ajax method, there's no possibility that this line will actually execute before this, right? There's a chance, but with our processors and CPUs, this will never happen. Okay. Um, Again, so this is how these are async methods. So append file, write file, read file, all of them are async methods, and anything that you write after that will be executed first, and then this is going to complete. All right, that's why you have the callback function over here. Anything that is dependent on this function, all the code goes inside this callback function, just like the Ajax one. Okay. All right. Any questions before you take the break? And then there's a big activity. Good. All right. So let's take a break. We'll start at 8 o'clock, and then we'll kick off with a bigger exercise.
Does anybody actually do this? If they get yelled at?
What is it?
Just skipping
The
curly
parentheses.
braces.
It's
Frowned upon?
it's not. Yeah. I mean, at that point, it's better to use the ternary statement, like do it all in one line. You know the.
Oh no, I just saw it in
Yeah.
a video where he skipped the curly
Yes.
brackets, and I
Yes.
was like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just-
Generally, if you're using if statement, if else, it's preferred that you use the parentheses because right now there's only one line. Maybe next quarter that comes in, they have to add a line. They'll have to have that. Yeah. If it's going to be one line, then use a ternary operator. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
The colon one?
Learned
Yeah.
that like yesterday. Or the day
Oh,
before.
okay. Yeah.
The question mark. Wait, is it question mark?
Yeah. It's
Question mark.
what is it?
Yeah. The first variable or the condition, I think.
Yeah.
Or the condition you're checking.
Yeah, something like this. Yeah, so the condition
Yeah.
that you're checking, if it is
And
true or
true.
if it is false. Yeah. So if it's going to be one line, then preferred way is do that. Otherwise, put in the curly brace.
Yeah.
In your opinion, it's better to attend tomorrow because they at the same time the career services, the virtual track talk about the strategies, or this one. That
So-
one 5:15, this one at 5:37.
This one, how to connect between API and send a message to the next one. Okay, what's the other one?
Some important people talking.
Mm, I think this would be good. I mean, that one, both are good, but the other one is more on using Node.js. So I would prefer you complete this week for Node.js before you attend that one. Might be
They will
confusing.
repeat that one
I think so.
because
I'm
normally,
not sure.
for what I know, that this one will not repeat.
Which one will not be?
This one.
This one will not be. So I would
Because
prefer,
they sent the invitation for like 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So
So
I will do this.
attend this one, but I think they record every.
Mm-hmm.
You can go back and review that as well. I think they record the sessions, or you can ask where do you get the. You can ask on. You can email and say, "Are these record?" I think these are recorded, but this will be better. It will teach you that how to go through and do that. Yeah. Mhm. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So this is activity number 15. It's called Bank.js. So you're creating a bank system, and you're going to be using read file, write file, and or append file. So how does this work? Let's go ahead. Let me go ahead and quickly show you a demo for this one, and then you guys can go ahead and start working on it. So this bank, your program is going to have 4 commands: total, deposit, withdraw, and loto. Okay. Total does not have any arguments, so just total. So what it should do is, if I this, let's see. Okay. So you will have a bank.js and a bank.txt file. Okay. If I run this application saying node bank.js and then total, right? It should add up all the numbers that are in this file bank.txt. Basically, it is telling you the account balance of an account. Okay, so again, you don't have this file given to you. Oh, it does actually. So this file has a bunch of numbers which are float, right? It has decimal numbers, comma separated. Basically, when I do a node bank.js total, it should add up all those numbers and give me the total of that, whatever is in the text file. Okay. The second command is deposit, and then after the deposit, you need to give a number. This will go ahead and add that number to bank.txt file. Okay, and then when you do a total again, it's going to add that number. So for example, I'm going to do node bank.js. Okay, deposit. Did I spell that right? Yeah. And then let's suppose I go ahead and deposit $3.05. Okay, it says deposit 3.5. Now if you go back and open that file, you should have, oh, it didn't. Let's go back and refresh it. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. That's fine. Go back here. There's your 3.5 at the end of the file. Okay, so now if I do node bank.js total, it is going to give me a new total, which means it's going to add up all these numbers. Previously it was $29.06. It added 3.5 to it, and then it shows me the new number. Okay, similar to deposit, withdraw takes that amount from this file. So if I do node, oops. node bank.js withdraw. Okay, now if you do a total, it should give you the new balance. Okay, so in your file, what is going to happen? It's actually when you do a withdraw and put a number, it's putting it as a negative number, right? Because when you sum them up, it's going to actually subtract it. So that's how it's working. So if you say deposit, it puts a number over there with a positive sign, no negative. When you say withdraw, it still adds to the file, but with a negative number. Why? Because when you do a total, it's going to add these number up and these are going to be subtracted. Okay, any questions so far? Total, deposit, withdraw, everybody clear? Lodo is a little bit challenging. Next one, what it does is, let me show you how it is working. So, bank.js and just do Lodo. So this should subtract an amount from the bank balance, right? What amount? You can pick any amount. Okay. So when you type in node, when a user types in node bank.js Lodo in your code, you're going to go ahead and subtract. You are basically playing a lottery, and you're going to subtract some amount from your total. Any amount. You can hard code that amount. Okay. In the solution, I think it's hard coded to 25 cents. Okay. So if I do this, the first time it says it's going to subtract 25 cents. Okay. The next thing this function does is it's going to generate a random number from 1 to 10. Okay. And then you're going to pick a number. Let's suppose you picked 1. You're going to hard code that number. So if the number that is randomly generated is equal to, let's suppose you chose 1, right? You're going to hard code this number. If this number is equal to 1, you are going to basically, the person has won the lottery and you're going to add some amount to that bank balance. Okay? So for example, if I keep playing this at some point, nope, still lost 25 cents. Still lost. Okay, it's not my day today. Really? Finally. So finally, at some point after losing almost like $2, I think I have won the lottery. So this is what will happen. Now behind the code, again, what is happening? There are 2 steps. The first step is you are always going to subtract an amount. That's like the fees for buying the card. Okay? And it's fixed at 25 cents, which is 0.25 in the code. In the solution, you can put any number, it doesn't matter. Okay? So you're going to subtract that. The second part of this is you are going to randomly generate a number and then match that number to another hard-coded number. Could be 1, could be 3, could be 2, doesn't matter. If this number matches the one that is randomly generated, you are going to add a bigger amount. Let's suppose if 25 cents is losing, you can add like $2 to the account. That's what it does. Okay? Again, start with the first 3. The last one again is a little bit more challenging. It's not as difficult. It's just the description is more difficult. But try to make sure that you are able to complete the first 3 ones. Okay, start with the first. Of course, this is the easiest, and then it kind of goes in order of difficulty. Again, you have your bank.txt given to you, and then you are always adding to this file. So this is your basically write file, well, append file, right? And then you're reading the numbers. So that would be your read file. I think those 2 functions should do it. You shouldn't be using write file, otherwise going to overwrite this file. So I think in this case, append file would be more appropriate. Okay, Miri, you're already done? Are you done already?
No.
Oh. All right. So give this a trial. Let's take like 20, 25 minutes. And we'll check back and see how the class is doing. Why are you guys laughing? You can't do it in 20, 25 minutes? I have full confidence you guys can do it. There are some hints, if else, or switch case statements. Hmm?
Something else to be done. I thought this would be it, like way that reduce. Because in the last activity, whenever I tried to console.log data from the array file, it gave it to me in an array. So I thought this would be the solution to add together all the numbers. Excuse me.
Okay.
But it returns it as it is not a function.
Data is not a function.
Data dot reducer or dot
Where's the reducer?
right. That's a self
So you're creating a function called reducer, which where's the accumulator? Oh, this thing you're passing in, you add them up.
Yeah, this is one example of the game. So I assume this one's already.
Right. So try to search what you are searching in the documentation. You're looking at the JavaScript documentation, the front end one. Try to see for the Node.js first. How do you reduce? Is there a reduce in Node.js? I don't know. Maybe it's not.
Okay.
So that's how I would search it instead of the documentation for from the front end JavaScript. Try to look at these documentation from Node.js that it might not exist.
All right, thank you.
So Node.js. So what are you guys? You guys can just get this, remove the split this, and then add the numbers up, right? Do a data dot split, remove the commas, and add the numbers up in a for loop.
Oh, okay.
That should be.
Yeah, I saw a reducer the other day.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
what
thought,
I
Oh,
let's
but
try
that's
this.
right. But is it available in Node.js? This is in your.
So like it might not.
That's what I'm
work.
saying. Yeah,
It's
this is
okay.
MDN. This is your front end JavaScript. But is this function available in Node.js? I don't know. Yeah, that's how I would search and try to find out. Um, is there array reducer in Node.js? Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a reduce function in Node.js. Yeah, I don't think there's a reduce function over there. I don't see any. Yeah. Right. Right.
Like the browser has to do that as well.
Yeah. But they try to do it, but looks like they don't have the reducer, unless I'm missing something. At least I didn't find anything. Is that the reduce function is a new thing in JavaScript? Let's see. Let's see what. Yeah, let's see if it when it was introduced. Yeah, it's an ES6. It's in the more later version. So they're still working on some of the ES6 features, and they have mentioned that they are divided into three groups. So some of the features are there, some of them they're still working on it. So let's see. Um, Shipping stage in progress. Okay, let's look at this one. Let's see. This. All right. So what is it? Oh, yeah. Looks like they're calling it typed array. Interesting. So the function is there. It's just the way you guys are using it is a little bit different. So so it's going to be typed array. Interesting. So let's look at the. Oops. Right. Uh huh. Did you find it?
No, I'm having a weird issue. So if I console.log data from the read file, it'll give me an array. So I split the array, and then inside the split array, I'm doing a for each statement. So split that into for each element. Balance equals element plus balance. And then a console log balance.
Okay.
But this is what happens. It'll go, I think, 10, 2.3310, and then it starts at I don't really understand what's going on.
So you are adding a new balance in your console log. That's why you see all these. So you are saying that spread the data, and then for each number in your file, Um, for each of yeah okay for the array for each number, go ahead and add that number to the balance and console log the balance. Then go back again and then console log the new balance. Then again, then again, then
Yeah, but
again.
why isn't it adding, like, one did just give me one whole number if it was actually adding them together properly?
It is adding properly, but you are console logging it every single time. If you move this outside, it's going to give you only one. So you are console logging every time it does it. Otherwise, it's going to give you. That's why it gives you multiple times. Um,
Yeah, that's
well, again, it has to be. You are still within this function. Can you format it right click format?
to move this outside the function.
Um, no, that's fine. I'm trying to see where how it is. So if there's an error, yeah, because you have declared it inside, that's why it's not available. So move that inside. Yeah. So you split the data, balance is 0, and then for each element you add this, and then you come back over here, and it's going to give you the new for each. Yeah, but this should be run it again. Why do you see so many?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I don't get it.
Is there any other code somewhere?
Nope. That's it. I have all this commented out.
Okay.
If I do balance plus element instead, maybe it has to do with
Well,
the
this
order
is
it's
a,
being added.
what is it?
Maybe it has to do with the order it's being added.
No, it shouldn't. But it's console logging every time, right? And where's your bank? Roger, look at this file. So it's 1, 2.2, 5, 10. Go back. So you're reading this file, okay, and you get the data back, this whole everything, and then you're splitting this based on the comma, and then you're saying split it up for each. Element, add them up, and then go back here.
Really should, because right here I will include negative values. Basically, it boils down to the way computers think. Yeah, so the way people process it's not accurate technically, but it's not
That's so weird.
Something with this split data function. Let's see, is this the right syntax? Call that function. Value. And oh yeah, what is the data type for this value?
String.
String. So you're trying to add strings up, so that's why.
Oh.
So you have to convert it into a number.
Okay, so parse.
Parse float.
Float. Thank you.
Alright, do we need a few more minutes? Wow, that was the fastest response ever. Alright. Well, let's take 10 more minutes. see, bank.js. So I need two arguments. Total and then something. So start with const fs is equal to require fs. Okay. Say const action. Let's call that our first argument. So process.argv 012, and then constant value be a process.argv 3. So this is because we have our functions called the first is going to be total. So in this case, action is equal to total. If it is deposit and then some number, so this means in this case action is going to be deposit and then value is going to be some number. Right? That's why we need two arguments and so on and so forth. Same with the withdraw. So my action will have the first argument and my second argument will be a number or nothing at all. For example, in case of total, value is basically going to be null. Okay. The next, they were saying we can use switch statement to identify the type of the transaction. Let's call it type. Type. Oh, it's too much to change now. Let's keep it actually. Okay. So then we can use our switch statements. Let's keep it simple. So switch action. So if the action is total, I'm going to do something. If the action is deposit, then I'm going to do something, and we'll come back and fill up this code. If the action is withdraw, then we are going to do something. We'll come back and fill this up. Okay, the last one was Lodo. I won't complete the Lodo one. Then we have to do something. Okay, so based on action, if it is total, deposit, withdraw, or Lodo, then I have to do something. Let's create functions for each one of them. So for example, if the action is total, I'm going to call a function called total. I haven't defined it, I'm just studying it out. If I say deposit, I'm going to create a function called deposit. I'm going to just call that. And then if it is withdraw, I'm going to create a function called withdraw. And then I'm going to do something in that function. Similarly, I'm going to call a loader function. And it makes it easier to understand and modularizes my code. So now I have to do is I have to create these functions, and these are going to do with the read and append file. So I'm going to just stub out these function really quickly. Function total. So this function. Similarly, I'm going to need full function. So the second one is going to be deposit, withdraw, and then okay. We can test these out really quickly. Also, if you just do a console log total function called, and then we can do the same thing here, here, and here. Just to test these out. So right now none of these functions do anything. I'm just stubbing them out and then making sure that this is working. Then we can go back and fill those functions. So let's go back and run this. If I say node bank, if I say total, my total function should get called. Okay, that's working. If I say deposit, then my deposit function gets called. If I say withdraw gets called. If I say lodo, a lodo method gets called. So these are good. Now let's go ahead and fill out please the total one. So I have to read this file, which is looks like float numbers, but these are going to be strings. So I need this, split them up, and then convert into numbers and then add them up. Okay, so I don't need this. My fs module is declared up, so fs dot read file file path. So this is going to be bank.js. The next one is options. We can skip that. It's by default UTF-8, so you don't have to worry about that. Callback function gives a error and data. Okay. Let's go ahead and console log if error happens. I don't want to proceed. Console log error, and then just return. Okay, if this is successful, let's go ahead and split this. So I have my data, which is a string. Let's say let data array is equal to data dot split, and we will split it on comma space because there's a space over here, right? Comma space. Okay. So we'll go ahead and split this. This is going to give me an array of strings, which are numbers, and then I need to do through this array. You can use for each, or you can use the for loop, whichever you are comfortable with. I start from 0, goes to my data array dot length. Ooh. Okay, now I have to add these numbers up. Before that, I need to parse them. Let's create a variable, let result is equal to 0, and then I'm going to add the call it total. So this is my total amount. Total plus equal to, I'm going to use parse float, data array, and then I, and that should add up my total. Right? So loop through the split array. Total is a float. Goes ahead, adds them up, and console log. You have a total balance of dollar. This is going to be total. Okay, does that look good? So I'm reading the file. Oh, thank you. Okay. Anything else? Okay, let's go ahead and run this. Yes, and then the total command. Ooh. Let's see. Data.split is not a function. What am I missing here? What is it? Jeremy, what are you saying?
I just have, I don't have the red and I don't have the array type of data.
Okay. Why is that? The split, it does it matter? Oh, so the split is working something differently? Yeah. So it should split this. It says data. Oh, I have a typo here. It's literally split the way, or is it not? No, it's spelled right. Space after comma, but there's a space, right? It's not recognizing my split function. So nobody had this issue? Am I the only one? Oh, what did I forget? I'm forgetting the encoding over here. So it's not able to recognize this as a string. That's why. Remember in the reading file we have to mention the code encoding. So now it's reading like a hexadecimal and it's saying, oh, it's not a string anymore. It's actually a hexadecimal. So that's why. That's the issue. All right. Let's clear this big error and then, and there it is. Okay. Any way to reduce this? Maybe you could do a. Did anybody reduce this, round it off to like 2 numbers? How do you do that? Anybody did that? No? So I think there's a function called toFixed. Yeah, look in this one. So this will fix it. Basically, it truncates it and only gives it to 2 decimal places. So total dot toFixed 2. Yeah, that looks like that. Okay. All right. Any questions? I did the first one. The next two are kind of similar. Now you are getting it and you're appending the file instead of reading. The last one I will leave up to you guys. Once you are done with the first 3, give it a try. It's kind of similar. It's just using a random function. That's all it is. Okay. Any questions? Confusing? Not confusing? Ish? A little bit more practice and this should be, you guys should be good. Okay? Alright, so let's look at the, let's look at some more Node.js Node.js code. Let's go back here and I am going to show you now. So all right, so for now we've been looking at some of the Node.js documentation, which I closed, I think. Okay. Some of the modules that are built into Node.js. Okay. But there will be times where you are going to be using Node.js modules which don't exist in Node.js, but somebody else has created. Okay, so there's a whole library. Remember in JavaScript, you guys Google JavaScript libraries. There are so many libraries. For example, you can do the exact same thing like making HTTP calls in JavaScript, but jQuery is a library and they give an AJAX function, right? Similar to that, there are a lot more libraries or modules that are built by other people for Node.js, and the best site to look into those packages is called npm. So if you go to npmjs.com, okay, the people who created this have a good sense of humor. So they have, if you see this over here, it says nail polishing minions, and every time you refresh, it kind of updates the name. Oh, it's not updating for me. But they kind of come up with these different, but that's not what npm stands for. Npm actually stands for Node Package Manager. Okay? Yes. Just click on it, it changes. Oh, there you go. Naughty programmer manipulator. All right, that's a good one. No packages. All right, that's the opposite of what this is. Yeah. Not pictured mangoes. Wow. All right, so this is the place. There are different websites, but this is one of them that has um, a lot of Node.js modules. Okay. Um, Again, npm stands for Node Package Manager. Basically, this is what is managing your module. Node Package Manager. Okay. So, for example, one of the Node packages that you'll be using a lot is called Axios, and we'll take a look at that one. It's called Axios, and whenever you are looking at the packages, again, these are all third-party packages. Please make sure you are looking at kind of verifying is okay, how many people are using, how many versions are they being updated or not. There are some interesting ones that are in Russian and Chinese. I'm not saying anything. Be careful if you're installing those node packages. There are a lot of different node packages over here. Okay, so make sure you're verifying somebody from the good source who have good documentations. Okay, I know somebody from the previous class were looking, and then he showed me documentation, and it was like, well, everything in Russian, and he was like, well, it seems like they're tracking something. I was like, did you install it? He was like, yeah. I was like, all right, good luck. So, yeah. So again, but this is a site where it is hosted. All of them are hosted. If you find something suspicious, you can report them. But again, so the one that we are going to be looking at is called Axios. Okay. What this does is it makes HTTP calls from your Node.js. All right. Remember, we were using jQuery. Similar to jQuery, making AJAX call, we are going to be using some different packages. Again, you can do the exact same thing in Node.js, HTTP library, but we'll take a look at that later on. What I want to show you is how to use different packages which don't exist or don't come built in with Node.js. Okay. So let's look at some of the documentation for this and see what we have to do. Okay. Similar to our inbuilt packages, you need to declare the package, import this package, and then go ahead and make a get call. Okay, very similar. So let's go ahead and see how we would code this one, and then you guys can go ahead and give it a try. Okay. So this is what Tyler, remember, was mentioning in the beginning of the class, like a package, sort of a library. This is what it is. It's called npm, and that hosts everything. Yes, Raymond, do you have a question? No. All right. So let's go ahead and create. I'm going to create a folder Axios, and then I'm going to create a file axios.js, and then from the documentation it says const axios require this. I'm just going to copy this. Okay, and then the function is called get. It looks like it takes a URL, and then it has the then function, cache, and finally. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the same thing. Let's go back to our OMDB API, and then OMDB API, and then kind of pull similar data that we were doing in our front end. This time we'll do it in our Node.js code. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's generate a URL. Okay, and then I have to pass in my API key. Correct. It's API key. This one. Okay. So it is going to be axios dot get. Okay, and then dot then catch and finally. Okay, dot then, and then dot catch, and then dot finally. Finally. Okay, let's break these, each one of them down, and then see what each one of them is doing. So dot get and dot then should be familiar. Okay, dot get you will pass in. Looks like you have to pass in a URL. Let's go ahead and complete that. So this is my URL. Let's go ahead and replace this with the key. Oops. And then what am I searching for? It's t is equal to this. And okay, so that's my URL. Then function, if you remember from Ajax, it should have your data back. So let's go ahead and say response. Okay, and let's just go ahead and console log this response and see what comes back. Okay, any idea what catch does? Exactly. So catch is actually catching if there's any error over it. In the Ajax function, remember, there were 3 callback functions. In this, it kind of separated out. And again, that's from the documentation. So we need to understand how these guys have written this, how these people have written this one. So apparently the way they have written is that errors are going to come in this function. Okay. So we can actually just create the function exactly as it is. Error. And then just console log this error. Okay, is that how they have it? Yeah. Okay. Any idea what finally is? What is it? Something that is always executed. Excellent. So this is kind of more prominent in different languages such as Java and C#. What your finally method does is it ensures that this function is always going to be executed whether there's any error or success. It doesn't matter. Okay, so this is an optional function. You can skip it, but if there's something that you want to put, that you want to make sure even if the error occurs or the success occurs, you want to do something, this is where your code will go. Okay, for for now we don't need this. I'll just console log saying finally function. Okay, again, this is exactly from their documentation. They have the get function. If it is successful, it should give you a response back and you're able to log that response and everything should be good. Okay. Any questions so far? Can we go ahead and, before I run this? Okay. Again, I went to npm, looked up this package, look at the documentation, and then I'm going to run this now. So let's go ahead and open terminal, ls, and node cs.js. Alright, looks like it's giving me an error. Okay, if you see, it says cannot find module Axios. Okay. Let's go back to our code and look at it. So what I did was I did include, I'm importing this, but this package is not part of Node.js, right? It's an external package. So before you use any package that is external, that is not part of Node.js, you have to install it. Okay. Now, how do you install these packages? Prepare this. So I am inside my directory. All right. The command is npm install and then the package name that you're trying to install. Okay. And if you don't know the package name, the first thing it will show you is this. This is what you need to do. Okay. So this is only required if you're trying to use a package that is not part of Node.js. Okay. This is a third-party package that somebody else has created and hosted on npm. So you need to install it first before you can use this. And the command is npm install Axios, or short you can do npm iaxios. Okay, they both do the same thing. So see what happens once I go ahead and install this. It's going to npm and it downloads and goes ahead and tries to download everything. If you see this package, looks like it's installed, and you will see a folder called node underscore modules. Okay, this is by default created when you do a npm install. You don't have to worry about it, but just to tell you guys, any third-party library or module that you install from npm, they're going to be installed in this folder. So if you open it, you will see a lot of modules. Among them is Axios as well. So what are these? These are the modules that actually Axios uses. So they are installing their own packages. They're installing some other third party, but we don't have to worry about it. But what is important is that it will create a folder node underscore modules. And this is where all your third-party modules are going to be installed. For example, if you were using another module, let's say Axios 2, you would do the exact same thing. You would say npm install Axios 2. It's going to be installed. Now, if you run this code, it should go ahead and work. Okay, so now it is working. It is doing something, actually returning you all the data. Wow, that's a lot of data. Let's see. Where's the data that I'm actually looking for? Does anybody remember the property name? Is it response.data? Let's see. Let's try response.data. Nope, still returning a lot of stuff. Let's see. So somewhere over there is our data that we are looking for. Response. Do you have the right link? img, img. Let's go back. Let me make sure. Oh, it's a. Yeah, I'm using the wrong URL. That's why it's. So it's returning me an image. Okay. Let's try this again. So run this and oops. Now I have a typo, of course. There we go. That's better. Okay. Now there's my data. Go back here. Okay, something similar to the JavaScript one. When you do it in the front end, you're getting this data back. Now, how do you do the same thing in Node.js? This is how you would do it. Okay, we'll look at some of the HTTP modules that are built in, but this is the easiest way, just like jQuery makes it easier. It tells you two things. First thing, how do you use some of the third-party Node.js module that somebody else has created? And then how do you make a HTTP call? Okay? Any questions? npm install and the package name. Again, this is the site npm website, and they have a lot of packages. You can search through depending on what you're looking for. They have all kind of packages over here. Okay. Again, npm is not the only one. There are a few more. You will hear the word yarn. And there's one more. Those are more popular, but npm is the more popular one, and almost everybody has a package that is built for Node.js would be hosted on npm. Okay. All right. Again, it does not stand for nutritious pumpkin meal. It is Node Package Manager, and most of the time people forget to install that library before using it. So make sure when you have this and you see an error saying module not found, is probably because you have not installed it. And the hint is you should have a folder called node modules. It should have this thing installed over here. Yes. Yes, for now, yes. There's a different installation and we'll take a look at it. But anything that you're trying to install that is being used in your file, it has to be local. It has to be installed in this folder only. Okay. We'll take a look at the other method later on. But when you're trying to do this, anything that requires the required syntax needs to be installed in the same folder where your Node.js or JavaScript file is. By convention, that's the rule. Okay, there's a different way. There's a different method. We'll take a look at a later point. But for now, yes, it has to be the same file. Okay, any other questions? If this is installed outside this path, it's not going to still give you is going to give you the same error, because this require is looking for this package under this folder. Yes.
Is it doing anything behind the scenes, or could we just like copy that, like those folders?
Yes, you can copy that folder. Yeah. No, it doesn't do anything fancy. You can install it outside, and I can drag this drop and put it in. Yeah, doesn't matter. Yeah, there's no like a computer-wide installation. It's actually just a bunch of JavaScript file that it is referring. So if you open this up, it's actually just referring one of these. So you can actually look at their code, what they have done. They are actually using some other modules also. Okay, pretty cool. If you guys are interested in looking at what the third party these are all open source. You can take a look at their code as well, just like JavaScript. Okay. Any other questions? All right. So go ahead and give this a try. This is the next activity, and it's similar to what I just showed you. You're going to use OMDB. If you remember the key, please use your key. Otherwise, just for today, you can use the trilogy. But again, don't. Okay, but you guys should have your key from the previous activities. So if you remember, use it for now. You can use this one. This is going to be activity number 18. So just when we looked at our Ajax in JavaScript, we're going to do something similar. We're going to make a call, get the data, and just basically kind of output that data. Oh, looks like you guys have a code given. Let's see, what is this? So take any movie with the word title as a node argument and retrieve the year it was created. Okay, let's start with that. Use the Axios module. Trying to see if there is a way to see like top npm modules that are being used, but I don't see any easy way. Yes, what's up, Joe?
First day of year ever. It looks like it's coming from Mansfield and Seattle.
Okay, what's the error? Right. What did I say if you get the cannot find mod? Did you install it? You did, and it's in the correct location. It should be inside your folder like this. These two should be on the same path. Okay.
So we're gathering second index, right?
Oh.
So we could always say like, oh, let's grab 2, 3, 4, and then let's change this to other. But the problem is we don't know how long the market is. So is there a way that we could no matter how long or short that is,
Thank you.
well, no, this would be our knowledge, and this is grabbing some steps.
All right. One more very difficult concept that I want to introduce in the last 5 minutes. No, I'm just joking. That's all. Okay, just work on this, and we'll. I'll see you guys on Thursday again. Please make sure you practice these activities. We're kind of getting difficult. We'll see some more note packages on Thursday. All right. Make sure you complete this. Let me know if any questions. I'll see you guys on Thursday.